In this video we will look at how to play the turn for under the gun versus the big blind on dry boards. In part 1 we looked at how to play the flop, so in case you haven't checked that out yet, make sure to do so first. And in today's video we will learn on what turns to continue, at what frequency we want to continue, what sizings to use, and on what turn the big blind wants to start dunking. So let's get into it. What we were gonna check is what are we gonna do if under the gun bets 2.2 big blind decides to call. Now let's say the turn is gonna be a high card. Offsuited one, keep it completely rainbow, the board. We actually see that the big blind wants to start betting here sometimes on the turn, preventing us from bluffing him off hands and also getting some of our hands to fold. Remember, we're also betting our hands like 8s, betting our hands as 9s. You know, getting those fold is quite nice. And also if you have a hand like king, queen, king, jack, we pick up equity. And this is a reason why he wants to start betting hands like ace, deuce, ace, 7, so he doesn't miss value versus those hands. I think the most common thing that you will see is that the big blind is almost always going to check here. So that's also very important when you're studying. Make sure that you, one, study common spots, but you also study the most common lines. What we can see is that under the gun wants to continue at a fairly high frequency, 61% of the time here, checking 38% of the time. We can also use this, the heat map report function here to see what turns we want to continue barreling on a lot. We can see on the a6 we are barreling a lot, and basically on all high cards we're barreling a lot. And we are checking more on the lower cards, which are not as good for our range. We can actually visualize this by clicking here on the equity, so we can see how much equity we have on certain turns. We can see on the high cards we have a lot of equity. Because of this reason we can also continue more. And on the lower cards, like I said, those aren't as good for our range. And because of this reason we want to check here more often. Now let's have a look how that changes for 50 big blinds. Also here once again we're going to let under the gun bet 2.4 big blinds. We're going to let the big blind call, and once again the turn is going to be the king of clubs. What you can see here is that big blind actually doesn't want to do any betting here at all compared to the 20 big blinds where it does want to start betting some hands. Once again we're going to create the runouts heat map report. We're actually still looking at the big blind strategy. What you can see, it basically wants to check on all turns except for the 7x, which is just way better for his range. As we can see, he has a lot of 7x, so on a 7 he actually wants to start betting sometimes here. But for now, we're going to let the big blind check and see how we want to continue as under the gun on the turn after we see bet the flop and the big blind checked once again on the turn. What we can see is that there's actually a difference now in the sizings that we want to use. At 20 big blinds, we very often want to continue on the smaller side, betting 4 big blinds. We're almost never going for the bigger sizing. And when we look at 50 big blinds, we do want to start mixing in the bigger sizing. We have more chips behind and we want to start building the pot. Whereas with 20 big blinds, even by using a smaller sizing, we can still get it in on the river. What we can see is that we want to continue big here with our strongest ace X. We also want to start building the pot with our sets. And we want to use as bluffs our picked up gutters to a Broadway. And for a smaller sizing, we want to continue here with our weaker ace X, also with the 2 pairs, where once again we block his calling range. And we can also see that we still want to continue betting some of these smaller pairs as a bluff here sometimes. And we also still want to bet some king, queens and king jack offsuits, where we can go for thin value here against a 7. Also here, looking at the heat map, we mainly want to continue on the higher cards, which are once again better for our range. And on the lower cards, what you can see, we're still betting quite frequently. But when we bet, we actually want to go bigger. We want to use more of a polarized range. We can actually visualize this by changing the board here. Let's say we change the turn to a 4 instead of a king. Now what you can see here is that we mainly want to use the bigger sizing. Once again, we want to continue big with our strongest a6, build the pot, get that value. We also want to go big with our sets. And we actually want to start turning 5s into a bluff here, where we also have a gutter to a straight there with a 3. And we still want to continue with some of our higher cards where we block more of his strong a6. And that's the reason why we want to go big with the queen jack suited compared to the king queen suited, because he doesn't have a hand like ace king. He does sometimes have a hand like ace queen, ace jack. So because of that reason, we rather want to use queen jack suited compared to the king queen suited. Now to compare it to the 100 big blinds, we're going to change this back to the king, and we're going to look at our strategy for 100 big blinds. We're going to let under the gun bet 2.6 big blinds. The big blinds are going to call. Turns once again going to be the king. Just like at 50 big blinds, the big blind wants to check here 100% of the time. As you can see, the big blind also wants to check here 100% of the time. And what you can see here as well in the heat map is that once again on a 7 turn, which once again is better for the big blind because he has more 7x, it wants to start betting. But in this case, once again, it wants to check his whole range on a king, which is way better for our range. And now we're going to look at how we want to continue here for under the gun. What we can see here, and that's actually interesting, we want to continue at 40% frequency, but here we almost always gonna go for a bigger sizing, whereas at 50 big blinds, we have a fairly mixed sizing. We want to bet 4.4 big blinds at 29% of the time, and we want to go big 18% of the time, whereas at 100 big blinds, we almost never bet small, and we almost always gonna go big. And what I think the main reason for this is when we look at the equity realization, our EV for 100 big blinds is 7.92 compared to 7.21 for 50 big blinds. And for the big blind, it is 3.69 compared to 3.78. So we have more EV at 100 big blinds. And for this reason, we mainly want to go bigger. See it as investing. You rather want to invest more when you know you will get more in return. So because of this reason, at 100 big blinds, we mainly want to go bigger. You know, put more pressure on the pairs that he has. Also knowing that when we bet big, we still have enough chips behind to continue pressuring on the river. Once again, when we look at the heat map, we can see that when we look at the equity, the higher cards are better for the under the gun range. And also when we look at the EV, it's being reflected there. The higher cards, we just have more EV. Because of this reason, we want to continue more. But actually, when you look at the strategy, it is actually very close. At the higher cards, we want to check 60% of the time, roughly. And at the lower cards, it's like 65%. So it's actually very close. And the reason for this is because our continuing range is very polarized. So when we look at our range here, for example, we can see that this is the range that we want to continue on a king turn. But when we change it to, for example, a 4, so a low card, which is less good for our range, we can see it's actually very similar, the hands that we want to continue with. We still want to continue with all our strongest a6. We still want to continue with our sets. And we want to start bluffing these smaller pairs. So you do see a change in the hands that we use as a bluff. Now we rather use our smaller pairs compared to more of the Broadways. And that just makes sense because with the Broadways on a king, we pick up equity to make a straight. And now with a 4, actually our lower pairs pick up equity. So because of this reason, our strategy is actually very similar for the higher cards compared to the lower cards. So as takeaways for the turn, when we are deeper, when we're playing 100 big blinds, we mainly want to use a really big sizing or checking. For 50 big blinds, we want to use more of a mixed strategy where we can still go for thin value with our king. And at 20 big blinds, we mainly want to use a smaller sizing, allowing us to bet more. And we can still get it in on the river with our value hands. I hope that this video has showed you how you can use Range Converter to study spots just like this, and if you've learned something from this video. If you did, make sure to like it, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any other videos, and you can sign up for free for Range Converter by using the link in the description, and you'll get 15 big blind heads up ranges for free to get started, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next video.